All right, folks, let's get to it. I'm pretty upset. Tucker Carlson, he used to be my guy for so long. But, of course, he's been straying in this anti-Israel, pro-Hamas position that a lot of conservatives are doing. We're starting to see a lot of conservatives now are split over the issue of Israel.
You explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that. John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all. George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I could just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody. Because like what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian. That's why. So I dislike them more than anybody.
A few moments later.
But I just want to say at the outset, because this has been weighing on me, I did say something that I really regret saying that I didn't fully mean. I said it because I was mad, which is always when I say things I don't really mean. When I get pissed, my wife's always telling me this, I was snippy and I didn't explain it. And I said something to the effect of, I despise Christian Zionists. And I'm just sorry that I said that, because I don't. I'm mad at a certain kind of thinking. Some of the nicest people I know are Christian Zionists, actually. You know, if you're in a car crash, they would save you. If you needed someone to watch your bank account, they wouldn't steal from you. They're like really good people and sweet people. I want to be very specific quickly about what I was talking about. In at least a couple of different occasions, the Israeli government bombed churches in Gaza and killed a bunch of Christians. And not an accident, of course. I mean, this is like a very high-tech military with precision. I mean, they, gave pagers with bombs in them to Hezbollah. So like this is a military, a national defense institution that understands what it's doing. They didn't accidentally bomb 2 churches and kill these Christians, and they never apologized for it. And so I brought this up with a couple of Christian leaders, and including the Speaker of the House, and said, like, we're paying to bomb churches? Because we're paying for it. And the response I got from every single one was, the Bible commands us to support Israel. And I said, so Jesus is telling us that we need to get on board with murdering Christians? Is that what you're saying? And they basically were just like, shut up. And I found that extremely, as a Christian, extremely upsetting. And I've never kind of gotten over that. But I should have said that. That's what I was talking about specifically. We cannot support the murder of innocents. I don't care what the pretext is. That is not allowed in our religion. And if it is, then it's not my religion. That's not what the New Testament says at all. It's not even a close approximation of what it says. There's no justification for that in the New Testament, period. So I am distressed. I don't hate. I shouldn't have said despise, but I'm very distressed about that. And that's specifically what I was talking about. So I just want to apologize sincerely for not being clearer.
These so-called conservative but pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine conservatives, of course, are spreading like a wildfire all over conservative news outlets, all over social media, all over YouTube. And Tucker Carlson is speaking from his heart. He truly believes that. Of course, he's going to apologize because he has no choice. That's the freaking majority of his base. The majority of the people who support Tucker Carlson are going to be Christian evangelicals who are most likely conservative in terms of political ideology. That's his entire base. And I'm sure he's getting a lot of pushback. He's getting a lot of text messages, a lot of phone calls, and he's trying to, of course, explain himself. That's why he's using this as an opportunity. But I believe when he was speaking with Nick Fuentes on his podcast, I believe he was telling the truth. I believe he's no longer a Trump supporter. I do believe he's supporting this Palestinian movement. I do believe that he doesn't want to come out and say that in its entirety yet because he doesn't want to lose his base. When he spoke of Ted Cruz, of course, that was when Ted Cruz quoted Genesis 12, where it stated that, of your line, I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through this line. And that's what Ted Cruz was referring to.
Do you think that it's just interesting because what you're now describing in a very defensive way, I will say, is foreign influence over our politics?
No.
And you began, and it's so transparently obvious to everybody. I don't know why you would be embarrassed of it. You've said that you are sincerely for Israel. I believe you. I don't think you have some weird agenda. You seem to be sincere.
By the way, Tucker, it's a very weird thing the obsession with Israel, when we're talking about foreign countries,
it's hardly an obsession.
you're not talking about Chinese, you're not talking about Japanese, you're not talking about the Brits, you're not talking about the French. The question, what about the Jews? What about the Jews?
Oh, like I'm an anti-Semite now.
Senator, you're asking the question, Tucker. You're asking, why are the Jews controlling our foreign policy?
Senator,
that's what you just asked.
Hardly saying that, and I have.
That is exactly what you just said.
Well, actually, I can speak for myself and tell you what I am saying.
Good.
On behalf not simply of myself, but on of my many Jewish friends who would have the same questions, which is to what extent, and it's interesting you're trying to derail my questions by calling me an anti-Semite, which you are.
I did not.
Of course you are. And rather than be honorable enough to say it right to my face, you are in a sleazy feline way implying it, or just asking questions about the Jews. I'm not asking questions about the Jews. There's nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. It has to do with the foreign government.
Isn't Israel controlling our foreign policy? That's not about the Jews?
You said, I'm asking you.
And by the way, you're the one that just called me, I think, a sleazy feline. So let's be clear.
It's sleazy to imply that I'm an anti-Semite, which you just did.
No, I just said, why is that the only question you're asking? You answer it. Give me another reason. If you're not an anti-Semite, give me another reason why the obsession is Israel.
I am in no sense obsessed with Israel. We are on the brink of war with Iran. And so these are valid questions.
But you're not asking about Iran or the Ayatollah.
If I can finish, you asked me why I'm obsessed with Israel.
Yep.
3 minutes after telling me that when you first ran for Congress, you elucidated one of your main goals, which is to defend Israel.
Yes.
And I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel. I don't see a lawmaker's job as defending the interests of a foreign government, period. Okay. Any government, including the ones that my ancestors come from. So that's my position. That does not make me an anti-Semite. And shame on you for suggesting otherwise. And I mean that. And that's low, and you know it's low. So why don't you just answer my questions
I'll answer
in a straightforward, rational way? You certainly have the IQ to do it.
So shame on you is cute, by the way, Tucker.
It is. It's not cute. I'm offended. I'm obsessed with the Jews. You just told me
you just called me a sleazy feline.
It is sleazy to imply that I'm an anti-Semite for asking questions about how my government is run.
You want to count how many questions you asked about? What about the Jews? What about Israel? What about AIPAC?
I never asked about the Jews. This has nothing to do with the Jews, whatever that means. This has to do with a foreign government. And once again, shame on you for conflating the two. They have nothing to do with each other. I'm talking about the influence of
Israel and Jews have nothing to do with each other?
All Jews, or an attack on all Jews, which I am not, nor would I ever be undertaking now. I'm not attacking anybody.
By the way, that's who Iran wants to kill, is all the Jews and all the Americans.
And I'm totally opposed to that, okay?
Of course, this fiery discussion, I remember when it first dropped, it went pretty viral. When it comes to Christian eschatology, it's highly complex. There are very prominent theologians who are well-respected in their fields who can't even agree on Christian eschatology. So it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, we all have this all uniform position on the matter. The greatest of the greatest theologians all have differing views. But the central idea, or the crux of the matter, is that based on Old Testament prophecy, God was going to split up Israel because of the sins of those who came before, and he's going to scatter the Jews across the world. And in a future date, he was going to regather those Jews, which they call Zionism, or desire for their homeland, and they were going to reestablish Israel again. Until in 1948, when Israel became a nation, and everybody was, of course, awestruck. We never thought we would see Israel, the actual Israel with borders, become a nation again. And that happened. End-time passages in the Bible states that in the last days they're going to suffer. God is going to protect, of course, the nation, but there will be a lot of suffering for the Jews, those who rejected Christ. There will be war, and of course there will be the final Armageddon, the final war. And then we know that Christ will come back for a 1,000-year reign, where of course he will reign. Among him will be those Christians who received him here on earth. So you have those who, of course, subscribe to the idea of replacement theology, where Israel, the ethnic group and nation, was replaced by the Christian church. That is a new Israel. So they believe that when the Bible speaks of Israel, they're referring to the church here on earth. And you have covenant theology, which, of course, Israel still means the Israel, the nation state Israel, is along with the ethnic Jewish population of Israel. And those who subscribe to covenant theology, like myself, we believe that God is still going to fulfill the promises of the Old Testament with the Israel that was referred to in the Old Testament. So those like Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, they subscribe to this idea of replacement theology. And that, of course, is tearing through conservative circles. For the first time, we're seeing a rift amongst conservatives, and of course had to do with Israel and their position on Israel. So of course, a lot of detractors, they tend to point the finger at John Darby. That's where the whole evangelical premise for our relationship with Israel comes from. John Darby's books in the 60s, 70s. But really, it actually started from the Reformation. When the Reformation happened, thanks to Martin Luther, that for the first time allowed theologians to study the Bible and interpret it of their own accord outside of the influence of the Catholic Church. And when they said, okay, well, it's time to correct a lot of the theological inaccuracies that the Catholic Church perpetuated, this is what we're going to come up with. And that was, of course, where the dynamic between us and Israel was, of course, reaffirmed. Now, to bring it back to Tucker Carlson, I'm not sure what's going on, but this is what I can say. The Bible tells us very clearly that there is a spirit of the Antichrist that's already present on the earth. All throughout the Old Testament, we've seen the same story happen over and over again. And of course, you start to see that the devices, the tactics of the devil are the same throughout all of biblical history. One of the more famous stories is the story of Esther, where, of course, she revealed her Jewish ethnicity to the king, her husband, in private because of Haman and what Haman was doing. Haman was preparing because, remember, Haman was a Philistine. If you know who the Philistines were, they were the people of Goliath. He, of course, carried generational anger toward Jews because his people were slayed by the Jews. And because of this, it burned in his heart to avenge his bloodline, and he wanted to destroy all Jews. And he did so first by destroying the image of the Jews, and then he used his position, his high position with the king, to convince the king to sign a decree or pass legislation allowing for the slaughter of Jews nationwide. It was left up to Esther as the last hope to save the people. And of course, she famously had the dinner, but she had the first dinner with Haman, and then the second dinner, she finally confessed, there is a man who is trying to slay my people. And she told that to her husband, the king. And he said, who is this person? And of course, she pointed out to be Haman. And that was where the death of Haman came. And I believe that the spirit of the Antichrist is, of course, moving now. The spirit of the Antichrist is capturing conservatives one by one, those who call themselves Christians as well. I'm not somebody who subscribes to replacement theology. I subscribe to the covenant theology position. And I believe the spirit of the Antichrist is going to continue to spread, turn people against Israel until that day comes. Prophecy in regards to Israel, Zechariah 12:3 states, on that day, I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who lift it will surely hurt themselves, and all the nations of the earth will gather against it. All the nations of the earth. That means the United States of America as well. So God is using Jerusalem to be a stumbling block for the world. Remember in scripture, he says he uses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. They're going to be in such a position that everyone hates them and everyone will gather against them. This is not an accident. This is coincidence. What we're seeing with Tucker, what we're seeing with Candace Owens, what we're seeing with Nick Fuentes, this ideology is going to continue to spread amongst the Christian circles, amongst national circles, to the point where all of the world, that's what they're trying to say here, all of the world will be against Jerusalem. So, of course, once this conflict reaches its climax, this is, of course, where prophecy will be fulfilled that God will supernaturally protect Israel. Again, remember, all the nations gather against Israel, gather against Jerusalem, and look what happens. Behold, a day is coming for the Lord when the spoil taken from you will be divided in your midst. For I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses plundered, and the women raped. Half of the city shall go out into exile, but the rest of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations as when he fights on the day of battle. On this day, his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives that lies before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west by a very wide valley, so that one half of the mount shall move northward and the other half southward. And of course, it concludes by stating, then the Lord my God will come and all the holy ones with him. And of course, as Christians, if we're paying attention, it's the same blueprint that was used during the days of Esther and all throughout the Old Testament. You destroy the image, you gather people against them, and it's going to be so convincing that even the Christians will, of course, side with the world against Jerusalem. So Tucker Carlson, I'm disappointed in Tucker Carlson. He was my guy for so long. I no longer can completely support like Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson anymore because their position on the matter. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Remember, at the end of the day, Christ is King, Christ is sovereign, Christ is Lord of Lords. And he is not surprised by the devices of men or the evil one. Deuces.